Hi, I'm Julie, and today I'd like to read from Hans Christian Andersen a story about a beetle. Now, don't get excited that this is a cute little story about a ladybug. No, this is a story about a dung beetle, and I'll let you make up your own mind about this guy. He's interesting. Okay, no more said. This is Brewster, my reading buddy. Okay. The Beetle Who Went on His Travels. There was once an emperor who had a horse shod in gold. He had a golden shoe on each foot. And why was this? He was a beautiful creature with slender legs, bright, intelligent eyes, and a mane that hung down over his neck like a veil. He carried his master through fire and smoke on the battlefield, with the bullets whistling round him. He'd kicked and he'd bitten, he'd taken part in the fights. When the enemy had advanced, with his master on his back, he dashed over the fallen foe. He had saved the golden crown and the emperor's life, which was of more value than the brightest gold. And that was the reason for the emperor's horse to wear golden shoes. The beetle came creeping forth from the stable where the farrier had been shoeing the horse. "Great ones first, of course," he said. "Then the little ones," said the beetle. "But size is not always proof of greatness." He stretched out his thin leg as he spoke. "And pray, what do you want?" said the farrier. "Golden shoes," said the beetle. "Well, you must be out of your senses," cried the farrier. "Golden shoes for you, indeed!" "Yes, golden shoes," replied the beetle. "Am I not just as good as that great creature beyond, who is waited upon and brushed, and who has food and drink placed before him? And don't I belong in the golden stables, in the royal stables?" "But why does the horse have golden shoes?" said the farrier. "Of course you do understand the reason?" "Understand well. I understand it's a personal slight to me," said the beetle. "It's done to annoy me. I intend to go out into the world and seek my fortune." "Well, then, along with you," said the farrier. "You're a rude fellow," said the beetle. And he walked out of the stable. And then he flew for a short distance till he found himself in a beautiful flower garden, all fragrant with roses and lavender. There were ladybirds there, with red and black on their backs, and delicate wings they were flying about. One of them said, "Ah, isn't it sweet and lovely here? Oh, how beautiful everything is today." "Ha, ha, ha! I'm accustomed to better things," said the beetle. "You call this beautiful? Why, there isn't even a dung heap here." And he went on, and under the shallow of a large haystack he found a caterpillar crawling along. "How beautiful the world is," said the caterpillar. "The sun is so warm, I quite enjoy it, and soon I shall go to sleep. And when I wake, I'll have beautiful wings to fly with. I will be a butterfly." "How conceited you are!" exclaimed the beetle. "Fly about as a butterfly, indeed! What of that? I have come from the emperor's stable, and no one there, not even the emperor's horse, who, in fact, wears cast off good golden shoes, has any idea of flying, except myself. To have wings and fly, why, I can do that already." And so saying, he spread his wings and he flew away. "Now, I don't want to be disgusted," he said to himself, "and yet I can't help it." Soon after, he flew down on an extensive lawn, and for a time he pretended to sleep, but shortly after He did sleep in earnest. Suddenly a heavy rain came falling down out of the clouds. The beetle woke with the noise, and he would have been glad to creep into the earth for shelter, but he could not. He tumbled over and over with the rain, sometimes swimming on his stomach, sometimes on his back, and he tried to fly, but that was out of the question. He did think he would not escape with his life. He remained quietly where he was. After a while the weather cleared a little, and the beetle was able to rub the water from his eyes. He looked about him. He saw something gleaming. He managed to make his way to it. It was linen, which had been laid to bleach on the grass. He crept into a fold of the damp linen, which certainly was not as comfortable a place to lie as in the warm stables. But there was nothing better, so he remained lying there a whole day and a whole night, and the rain kept on that entire time. Towards morning he crept out of his hiding place, feeling in a very bad temper with the climate. Two frogs were sitting on the linen, with bright eyes, actually gleaming with pleasure. "Wonderful weather this is," cried one of them, "and so refreshing. The linen holds together so beautifully. Oh, my hind legs quiver as if I was going to swim." "I should like to know," said another, "if the swallow who flies so far in her many journeys to foreign lands ever met with a more beautiful climate than this. What delicious moisture! It is as pleasant as lying in a wet ditch. I am sure anyone who does not enjoy this has no love for the fatherland." "Have you ever been in the emperor's stable?" said the beetle. "There is moisture. It is refreshing. This climate is not for me, but I couldn't take my climate with me on my travels. There is not even a dunghill here in this garden where a person of rank like myself could take an abode and feel at home." But the frogs either did not or would not understand him. "I never mention things twice," said the beetle, and he had mentioned this 3 times. He did not receive any comment. He went on a little further, stumbled against a piece of broken crockeryware, which certainly ought not to have been laying there, but as it was there, it formed good shelter against the wind and the weather to several families of earwigs who dwelt in it. Their requirements were not many, and they were very sociable and full of affection for the children, so much so that each mother considered her own child the most beautiful and clever of them all. "Our dear son has engaged himself," said one mother. "A dear innocent boy. His greatest ambition is that he may one day creep into a clergyman's ear. That is a very artless and lovable wish. And being engaged to keep him steady, oh, what happiness for a mother!" "Our son," said another, "has scarcely crept out of his egg, and he will be off on his travels. He is all life and spirits. I expect he will wear out his horns with running. How charming this is for a mother. Is it not, Mr. Beetle?" For she knew the stranger by his horny coat. "You are both quite right," said he. So they begged him to walk in. This is as far as he could get under the broken piece of earthenware. "Now you shall also see my little earwigs," said a third and a fourth mother. "They are lovely little things. They're highly amusing. They're never ill behaved, except when they're uncomfortable on their inside, which unfortunately happens at their age." Thus each mother spoke of her baby, and their babies talked on their own fashion, and they made use of their little nippers on their tails to nip off the end beard of the beetle. "They're always busy about something, the little rogues," said the mother, beaming with maternal pride. But the beetle felt it a bore, and he therefore inquired which way to the nearest dung heap. "Oh, that is quite out of the great world on the other side of the ditch," answered the earwig. "I hope none of my children ever go that far. It would be the death of me." "But I shall try to get that far," said the beetle, and he walked off without taking any formal leave, which is the considerate thing to do. When he arrived at the ditch, he met several friends, all of the beetles. "We live here," they said, "and we are very comfortable. We may ask you to step down into this rich mud. You may be fatigued from your journey." "Certainly," said the beetle. "I shall be most happy. I have been exposed to the rain, and I have had to lie upon linen, and cleanliness is that thing that exhausts me. I've also had pains in one of my wings from standing in the drought underneath a piece of broken crockery. It's really quite refreshing to be with one's own kindred again." "Perhaps you came from a dung heap?" inquired one of the oldest of them. "No, indeed, I came from a much grander place," replied the beetle. "I came from the emperor's stable where I was born, with golden shoes upon my feet. I am traveling on a secret embassy, but you must not ask me any questions, for I cannot betray my secret." Then the beetle stepped down into the rich mud, where three young lady beetles were just giggling. They didn't know what to say. "None of them are engaged yet," said one of the mothers, and the beetle maidens giggled again, this time in confusion. "I have never seen such beauties even in the royal stables," exclaimed the beetle, who was now resting himself. "Don't spoil my girls," said the mother, "and don't even talk to them, pray, unless you have serious intentions." But of course the beetle's intentions were serious, and after a while our friend was engaged. The mother gave them her blessing, and all the other beetles cried hurrah. Immediately after the betrothal came the marriage, for there was no reason to delay. The following day passed very pleasantly, and the next day very tolerable. On the third day it became necessary for him to think about getting food for his wife, and perhaps even for children. "I've allowed myself to be taken in," said our beetle to himself, "and now there is nothing to be done but to get on in return." No sooner that than away he went, and he stayed all day, and he stayed all night away, and his wife remained a forsaken widow. "Ah," said the other beetles, "that fellow that we received into our family is nothing but a complete vagabond. He has gone away and left his wife a burden upon our hands. Well, she can be unmarried again and remain here with my other daughters. Fie on that villain that forsake her so." In the meantime, Beetle, who had sailed across the ditch on a cabbage leaf, had been journeying to the other side. In the morning, two persons came upon the ditch. When they saw him, they took him up, turned him over, looking very learned, and one little boy said, "Oh, this is a black beetle on a black stone. We will give him a Latin name." The second person, who was older and also a scholar, proposed to carry the beetle home, as they wanted such a good specimen as this. Our beetle considered this speech a great insult, and he flew out of the speaker's hand. His wings were now dry, and they carried him a short distance till he reached a hothouse, on the sash of a glass roof that was partly open. He slipped in and buried himself in the warm earth. "Ah, it is very comfortable here," he said to himself, and he soon fell asleep. And he dreamed about the emperor's horse dying, and him being left the golden shoes, and 2 extra shoes because he had 2 more feet. This was all very delightful, and when the beetle woke up, he crept forth and looked around him. Ah, what a splendid place this hothouse was! At the back there were large palm trees. The sunlight made the leaves look quite glossy. Beneath them there was a profusion of luxuriant green and red flowers, yellow as amber or white like new-fallen snow. "What a wonderful quantity of plants!" cried the beetle. "How good they will taste when they're all decayed. This is a capital storeroom. There must certainly be some relation of mine living here. I will just see if I can find anyone that I can associate with. I'm so proud to be here." He prowled about in the earth, thought what a pleasant dream he was having about maybe that dying horse, and the golden shoes that he may someday inherit in that dream. Suddenly, a hand seized him and squeezed him and turned him around and around. The gardener's little son and a playfellow had come into the hothouse and spied the beetle. They wanted to have some fun with him. First they wrapped him in a vine leaf and put him in their trouser pocket. He was twisted around and he twisted around. He got a good squeeze from the boy's hand, and that was his hint to stay quiet. The boy went quickly towards the lake that lay at the end of the garden. Here the beetle was put into an old broken wooden shoe in which a little stick had been fastened upright for a mast, and to this mast the beetle was bound with a piece of worsted. Now that beetle was a sailor. The beetle seemed that he was in a large ocean. He was so astonished at its size that he fell over on his back and he kicked with his legs. The little ship sailed away. Sometimes the current of the water seized it, but whenever it went out too far from the shore, the boys pulled up their trousers and went after it. They brought it back to land, but at last, just as that went out again, the boys called, and angrily they went and hastened to obey, and as fast as they could into that pond they carried the little ship back to its fate. It was carried away further and further from shore till it reached the open sea. This was a terrible prospect for the beetle, for he could not escape the consequences of being bound to that mast. A fly came along and paid him a visit. "What beautiful weather we are having," said the fly. "I shall rest here and sun myself. You must be having a pleasant time of it." "You speak without knowing the facts," replied the beetle. "Can't you see that I am a prisoner?" "Ah, but I am not a prisoner," said the fly, and he flew away. "Well, now I know the world," said the beetle to himself. "It's an abominable world. I am the only respectable person in it. First they refuse me my golden shoes. Then I have to lie on damp linen and stand in a drought. And to crown all, then they fasten a wife to me. Then I make a step forward in the world, and when I find a comfortable position, just as I wish it could be, one of those human boys come and ties me up, leaves me to the mercy of the wild waves, while the emperor's favorite horse goes prancing about proudly on his golden shoes. This vexes me more than anything. But it's useless to look for sympathy in this world. My career has been very interesting. But what's the use of it if nobody knows anything about it? The world does not deserve to be acquainted with my adventures. For I ought to be given those emperor's shoes when that horse was shod. I stretched out my feet to be shod too. If I had received those golden shoes, I could have been an ornament in that stable. Now I am lost to the stable and lost to the world. It is over for me. But it wasn't over yet. A boat in which a few young girls came rowing up. Look yonder! It's an old wooden shoe sailing along, said one of the younger girls. And there's a poor little creature bound fast in it, said another. He's snoring. There's a poor little creature bound fast. The boat now came close to our Beetle's ship, and the young girls fished it out of the water. One of them drew a small pair of scissors from her pocket and cut the worsted without hurting the Beetle. When she stepped on shore, she placed it on the grass. There, creep away or fly if thou canst. It's a splendid thing to have thy liberty. Away flew the Beetle, straight through the open window of a large building. There he sank down, tired and exhausted, exactly on the mane of the emperor's favorite horse, who was standing in his stable, and the Beetle found himself at home again. For some time he clung to the mane, that he might recover himself. Well, he said, here I am, seated on the emperor's favorite horse, sitting upon him as if I were the emperor himself. But what was it the farrier asked me? Oh, I remember now. That's a good thought. He asked me why the golden shoes were given to the horse. The answer is quite clear to me now. They were given to the horse on my account. And this reflection put the Beetle into good temper. The sun's rays came streaming into the stable and shone upon him, and made the place lovely and bright. Traveling expands the mind very much, said the Beetle. The world is not so bad after all, if you know how to take things as they come. Unique philosophy from a dung beetle. Take it for what you will. You have a great day, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye. Say bye, Brew.